Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your lunch break and you're ready to start the new sessions. Building information model is revolutionizing the way real estate developments are designed, constructed, and managed in Cyprus. In this session, we have gathered some of the leading experts in this field to guide us through the latest advancements and applications. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Mr. Platonas Stylianou, CEO and founding partner at Platonas Stylianou and Associates Civil and Structural Engineers, who will introduce our esteemed speakers. Mr. Platonas, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you very much for being here today with us. And it is both an honor and a pleasure to moderate this so important discussion titled "The Future is Now, BIM as a Digital Innovation Blueprint for the Real Estate Market in Cyprus." It's also a pleasure to have Marios, Odysseas, and Thrasivoulos with us. And I think it's better for them to present themselves when I'll give them the relative questions, so we have to challenge them a bit, and we will see if they will remember their CV after those questions. So, building information modeling, or BIM, is far more than just a software tool. It is a comprehensive digital methodology that is reshaping the way we design, the way we construct, deliver, maintain, and manage. And so, through data environment, intelligent 3D modeling, and integrated workflows, BIM facilitates a collaborative, transparent, and data-driven approach in the entire life cycle of a construction project. And this is very important, the entire life cycle of a project, not just a part of it, the entire life cycle. In the context of Cyprus, a country that aims to strive for innovation, sustainability, and international competitiveness in the real estate and construction sector, the strategic adoption of BIM represents a significant opportunity. And it's always an opportunity for small islands and for thriving construction industries to implement those new technologies and use them in the correct way. So today's discussion will touch on three dimensions: opportunities, how BIM can accelerate planning approvals, enhance design coordination, and reduce life cycle cost; challenges, how can we change the regularity gaps, the industry readiness, and the skill development for that; and the strategic value, how BIM can be used as a tool to attract foreign investment, meet the ESG, environmental, social, and governmental goals, and raise the overall quality and transparency in the real estate development. So I'm very glad that we have the three experts with us today that will touch those three strategic values. So, Mr. Marios, Mr. Odysseas, and Mr. Thrasivoulos, what are your thoughts on this? And I will start with question number one. What is BIM, which is the basic one, and why it is considered a game changer for real estate development in Cyprus? So, Odysseas, please present yourself and give us your thought on that.
Hi all, thank you Platonas for your introduction. I'm Odysseas, I'm leading Simlexity. Simlexity is a digital design consultancy. So we basically provide expert solutions to clients, to architects, contractors, engineers, anyone in the architecture, engineering, construction industry, assisting them to deliver their projects more efficiently, to resolve challenges that have to do with their projects. So what is, I should ask the question now?
Yes,
yeah. So what is BIM? In simple words, BIM, or Building Information Modeling, is it's a digital model that incorporates all sorts of information specific to a project. That's why it's called information model, because it gathers all the important information that we need to design, build, and maintain a project. Why it is a game changer? It's a game changer because so I wanted to cancel out this misconception first that BIM is a software. It's not a software, not a tool. It's a process. It's a working process that is different to what we have been doing traditionally. And I believe it's a game changer because it exactly differs from the traditional way that we do things. It is a central digital library of information that can be accessible when it's optimal in real time by all stakeholders, that can be carried out throughout the life cycle of the project, and it can be also used in maintaining it.
Thank you, Odysseas. Thrasivoulos, please introduce yourself and give us your thoughts on this question as well.
Okay, first of all, I'm Thrasivoulos Kragiannis. I'm Senior Architect and BIM Coordinator at Konstanti Architects and Ambros 100. I'm also the coordinator for the Scientific Chambers BIM Committee. And also I'm a certified instructor for the Human Resource Development Authority, leading training sessions, programs in BIM. So elaborating on what Odysseas has already said, BIM is not just a model, it's a process that ends up in a 3D digital library of assets, let's say, and it's important because, first of all, it's visual, okay? We don't, starting from the BIM model, we don't have to produce drawings and schedules and detailings that are disconnected between them. Instead, we create the digital twin of the actual building, okay? And imagine drawings being more or less cameras that are hovering above and around the building looking at it. So if I make a change in a certain asset, for instance, if I add a door, it will appear obviously in all drawings or schedules and so on and so forth. This allows us to do all sorts of things. We can, for instance, carry out clash detections to find out where there are problems from the design stage instead of finding out on site where things are much more expensive to fix. We can have transparency throughout the design process, so we know what we have designed, where there are problems, we can solve them beforehand. And also, like Odysseas said, this is not just a model. The model is just one part of the process. It's a process that requires, first of all, collaboration from everyone. So in order to get that model which will be optimized, everyone needs to understand what's expected of them, when it's expected of them, and at which level of detail, okay? So everyone has to know and understand their role in the project and have, I don't want to say the right mentality, but mainly the ability, the capacity to work within that group in order to achieve that level of quality in our model. In the end, it's, well, like the English say, rubbish in, rubbish out. So if you build your models incorrectly or follow problematic workflows, you will end up with problematic outputs. So it's very important that everyone is on the same page throughout the project, regardless of the stage that they go into the procedure of design and build and maintaining the building in the end.
Thank you, Thrasivoulos. And Marios, what is your opinion on that? And please introduce yourself as well.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Marios. I'm the CEO of Studio 3DX. We now work in a little bit different space. We develop 3D configurators for real estate, yachting industry, and so on. But I've been heavily involved in the BIM world for the last 10 years. For me, BIM, and to add on top of what Odysseas and Thrasivoulos said, is about transparency, right? So when an investor asks for his projects to be developed in BIM. It's all about knowing and having knowledge of the liability of who has responsibility from the designing to the development and even facility management and further into even demolition at the end of the life cycle, as Platonas has said at the start. And yeah, I think that's the most important for me is liability, transparency, and coordination.
Thank you, Marios. And with that short first introductory question, we'll move now to the more technical question or more complex question, which every one of the speakers will answer only from himself, and then if you have questions at the end, we'll debate on them. So we heard that early clash detection, and we have to think why this early clash detection in BIM is critical. Because construction is inherently complex, with multiple stakeholders, specialist consultants, tight schedules, and in such an environment, design coordination is a critical, very critical and risky area. Without BIM enable an early clash detection, then there will be conflicts between architectural, structural, mechanical, interior design that will go unnoticed until the end of the project or in the middle of the project. Mistake will happen, and this will be costlier and harder to correct. And of course, this will lead to extensive modification, dispute, reworks, waste, schedule delays, frustration across the project and the design team. So if this detection and clashes are detected early in the digital environment, then can be resolved before we reach the site. So that's a big secret, to solve them before you reach the site, at the design stage. And BIM foster a culture for proactive problem solving on this that enables interdisciplinary cooperation, fewer RFIs, fewer change orders, and significantly better cost and time predictability. So we move to the second question. What are the main challenges or barriers to BIM adaptation in Cyprus today? And Marios, you have to think on that regarding technical, regularity, and cultural level.
Yeah, well, it's definitely threefold. I mean, you have the policies. Cyprus needs to start implementing these ISO 19650 policies that talks and analyze this BIM process as a framework. And you have to give a realistic timeline for the Cyprus government and the offices in Cyprus to adapt to this new era of BIM. And that's a big barrier that doesn't exist at all in Cyprus right now. I think Thasivoros will argue against that, and hopefully they will implement something new. Then you have the cultural. You know, we are living in a culture where we move fast as an industry, but we tend to use our traditional methods of designing, of dealing, of even selling. This market, the real estate market, is strong by, you know, face-to-face interactions rather than all this digital transformation that we see happening around us. And then you have education, which is a huge, let's say, effect. It has a huge effect on how these firms are educated, and they can really transform if they just have the incentive by the government and by educational institutions to educate themselves in order to produce better and harmonize themselves with this BIM framework.
Very good. Thank you, Marios. I think you open another big discussion, a big picture. So, Thrasivoulos, in your view, what changes in policy or in regularity or training or awareness are needed to support the broader BIM implementation in Cyprus?
Okay, first of all, we have to make sure that every aspect of BIM implementation is being developed simultaneously. So you can't have training without having the proper framework ready to receive those who have trained to implement BIM. Or you cannot be expected to force something to someone, for instance, to small firms which have a lot of their hands in their hands right now to implement BIM without properly explaining them the benefits, providing them the proper training, giving them incentives. So there's a whole process that needs to be implemented, and that can be go under the title BIM Adoption Roadmap and the National BIM Adoption Strategy that needs obviously to be carried out from the state. It needs to be carried out from the state because no one else is in the position to implement this on the large scale of a country. Now, having said that, we already know that carving out this national BIM adoption strategy and the BIM roadmap, it's a long process. So we have to say at this point that steps are already being made. So we have the scientific chamber BIM committee, which has concluded the first report, not on carving out the roadmap. It's not our responsibility, but our responsibility is provide the insight of how we can implement building information modeling in the Cyprus building ecosystem. So obviously, the steps that need to be taken are not something new. There are a lot of countries that have already made the transition. They have come across problems, they have solved them. We don't have to invent anything new for the process, but our input is extremely important on the aspect of the experience from the Cyprus industry. We have particularities, we have common practices that apply only in Cyprus, we have regulations that are specific to Cyprus, and we need to take all of this into consideration and provide a view of the possible problems that might arise for the transition through the lenses of the Cyprus industry. So if I have a minute more, these 4 key areas that we dealt with are the actions that need to be taken at the national level, what needs to be done for the BIM adoption in public works, BIM adoption in private works, and also for the BIM submission process to manage to get a workflow through which buildings can be automatically licensed, get planning permits, construction permits through a BIM-based system.
Thank you, Thrasivoulos. And with that, then, we should move to Odysseas. And please, Odysseas, can you share some real-life examples or cases or case studies where BIM added value to your work or to your project in Cyprus?
I have plenty of examples, but I will stand on a recent one and expand further on what you said, that we should fully resolve a project using BIM before going to site. That's not always the case. So the real advantage of BIM is that it is live and is responsive and it's fast, and it handles tasks beyond the design stage. So it doesn't mean that errors do not happen after you go to construction. Actually, most of the issues arise during construction, because that's where you have the actual materials. We live in an island that is far away from the real resources of construction materials. So what changes, and by the time you move to site, lots of things changes. So you don't find the available materials to build something, you need to work with something different. The cost doesn't allow you to use what has been procured. So the site is a living, it's like a living creature, a living organism, and things change. So we need to react fast. I have an example. We're working on Marco Polo. Marco Polo is a particularly complex building because it's inclined, so all the floors are stepping back. It has an inclination of 18, 20 degrees, something like that. So it was very difficult to set out to get very precise information about the concrete structure and the steelwork and and everything that was going on. So we were constantly designing. We were, as the building was progressing, we were designing changes. And at a certain point, we discovered a design error. And by that time, the steelwork was already fabricated and arrived to site. So everyone was waiting for it to be erected, and we had to make real quick changes to incorporate what was really already fabricated onto the design, in order not to throw away tons of steelwork. So having a central model that we controlled was able to send this information to all the project consultants and the contractor to approve these changes, compare them against the aesthetic elements of the facade, and finish it off without affecting the design at all. So that was really enabled because we had a central information model that could handle changes at speed.
Excellent example. Thank you, Odysseas. So we can see that in reality, BIM can help us in all aspects of the work, even during the concreting phase or just before that. So you don't waste any material, you don't waste your time, you find ways to resolve things and proceed. Very good. Any other example, or should I give the floor to the other speakers to give us their own examples?
Do I still have time?
You do have one more minute for a quicker one.
I don't know what to think of. So we have examples, that's international examples, but it shows what's coming here soon. So we have projects that work on certain BIM platforms that are able to interact with the virtual model on one hand and the physical model on the other hand by incorporating 3D scan data to site. So we're using platforms to compare in real time and automatically what has been designed on one hand and what's been built on the other hand. So we can interactively do a clash detection and get instant reports to the client saying how fast or how slow his building is progressing, and how many clashes have been found, and how does each clash affect the future elements that are going to be installed in a building. But that's very high level BIM. It involves all the stakeholders and the contractors, and the end users at the final stages.
Very good. Thank you, Odysseas, so much for that. Thrasivoulos, can you also share a real life example of BIM that help either during design or construction?
Yeah, I always bring as an example Hotel Flamingo Paradise in Brodaras, which, not for any other reason, but because it was our transitional project to BIM. It was designed with traditional methods and tools, and we made the transition after the tender process and before construction began. So for anyone familiar with the project, this has some complex geometry, especially on the rooms, that need to appear as if some cubes meet at a specific point in space in 110 rooms. So we designed that in AutoCAD, and we found out that it was impossible to check whether the steel structure was able to facilitate the construction. So we made the transition to BIM, and we were able actually to use the BIM model on site to successfully achieve the result. And of course, through this process, we found out all sorts of things that became basis for our BIM processes in the firm later. For instance, we discovered discrepancies between the QS and the actual build model, and it helped us resolve those differences. We saw the importance of having a transparency in about the role of each of each member of a team during the design and construction process. If I have 1 minute, I have a small funny story about that. We worked with the BIM model. I exported the plans in DWG in CAD files because no one else used at the construction site. For the contractor converted them to PDF. He sent them to the subcontractors. And at some point, a subcontractor who was responsible for creating the ducts, okay, where we're experiencing long waiting times, and we couldn't figure out why. And we called them at the office and to answer any possible questions he may have. And I loaded up the screen. He could see the Revit screen, the Revit server screen, and he froze because that guy was actually using Revit for fabrication, and because no one told them that we had an actual model of the construction, he was trying to recreate the BIM model from the PDF files in order to be able to create his ducts and send them to fabrication. So this is a prime example of how proper communication can save you time, and it's the cornerstone basically for BIM, not the software, not the technical aspects, but the proper communication channels and knowing who is responsible for what and at which stage.
Thank you, Thrasivoulos. So, Marios, having heard all that, how you think BIM supports sustainable development goals in the construction and real estate sector?
I love this work, sustainability. Well, in essence, when you have a 3D model, you can, work your way around with simulations. You can simulate it in a larger context, in an environment, in an urban scale, and essentially come down to realistic results you can re-implement back into your model and rework your way into a better design. And that's something that with developers, you won't really see that implementation. And that goes beyond BIM. You don't actually have to have fully implemented BIM to do that. But if you're really talking about sustainability, you have to have 3, 4, 5, 6 cycles of testing, simulating those 3D models. And you need every discipline to do that. And to do that, it means that you're moving towards this BIM implementation. Because all of the disciplines are there, everybody's designing in 3D, then you can run real simulations and give real value back to the environment and to your investor you're providing and to the end user you're giving the project.
Very good. Thank you, Marios. Odysseas, what do you think, having heard the previous thing about this, the real-life examples you gave us?
I will give another real-life example then.
With sustainability now,
huh? So things have become really, really fast and really responsive now concerning the time it takes for an output to be generated, that being a facade, conceptual building, and so on. So we've reached a point, we're working a lot with facades, so we've reached a point that we're creating a circular process that redesigns the joints of a building according to the material waste that it produces at the factory. So when you take a panel, like an aluminum tray, and you lay it down and you need to put it into a sheet, and when you place it in a rectangle, it generates lots of waste. So we're taking that and we're embedding it into the BIM model so that we regenerate the whole design, the whole panelization, that's how we call it, the jointing and the system and the structure as well, in order to reduce that material waste and make the panels fit exactly onto sheets. And that we're not talking only about rectangular or plane extrusions. We do that with very complex facades. And that's a very important aspect that BIM enables. And having the connection with the structural engineering model, the facade engineering model, really helps in the whole team assess the performance of these changes.
Thank you very much, Odysseas, for that. So now it's a question for all three of you, but starting with Thrasivoulos. In your view, Thrasivoulos, what changes do we need in order to help and attract foreign investment? If we need changes, huh? You may not need, but you have to tell us. What might BIM help to attract foreign investment or improve transparency for international stakeholders?
Okay, so we talked about how BIM is all about efficiency and transparency. So someone comes from abroad to invest his money in an environment he knows nothing about or knows a little about. So obviously he needs to know where his money is going, if it's properly implemented. Okay, so the building information modeling or building information management as a whole provides this transparency. And it's not just the transparency, it is the trust that comes with it. So it's all about building trust between the shareholders and the construction process as a whole and on all the players in the game. So trust becomes the cornerstone of any good collaboration, and that's fundamental in BIM. And it's not just about attracting investors, it's also about the quality of investors we attract. We're not just fishing for anyone wanting to invest money at any project, but we are looking for the highest level of professionals, and that will give us the opportunity to elevate the Cyprus construction industry as a whole through quality.
Thank you, Thrasivoulos. Odysseas, what do you think of that?
I can also add that now clients, and particularly international clients, are much more exposed to technology and to visuals and to information than they were 5 or 10 years ago. I mean, things changed a lot after COVID. So they need to know what happens. They need to know how their building needs to be shaped at the end of the day. So they need all this kind of information, and without it, they're just not going to buy.
Yeah. So you, Marios, what do you think?
Yeah, I want to build what Odysseas just mentioned. I believe that it should be the ask of the investor. We should, pass the ball to the investor and educate them to acknowledge the value of BIM. And they should ask for that even at a low level for their projects. Because getting a building is one thing. Let's say that everything goes well in the construction, the coordination, everything goes well. But then what happens later, in the facilities management? What happens in the maintenance? Is the information there 10 years after? And that's what the investor, that's the benefit, the value for the investor. Maybe they're paying a little bit higher when it comes to harmonizing everyone to use BIM at first, but then the value is impeccable. You can use it, reuse it, you can scan your building in 10 years and do extensions, expansions, anything that you can imagine, just by having the correct information in your 3D model and in the documentation handover.
Very good. So having listened to all that discussion now, I'm going back to the basic discussion we have internally, the three of us, at the beginning of our meeting. So what do you think? Is the construction industry ready? Is the development industry ready? Is the government ready? What shall we do now to make them ready if they are not? And what is our next step? How we can help this industry? Starting from Thrasivoulos again.
Okay, obviously, they're not ready. That's the easy part, okay? And we don't have to wait for them to get ready, okay? Because no one will, okay? So you have to, again, provide them with the proper framework to work in, the proper legislation to enforce at some point the use of BIM, but at the same time provide them with the proper incentives to help them make the transition. And obviously, you have to educate them properly to understand the benefits, because in the end, if no one understands why they're doing something, even if you force them and begin doing it, at some point they are going to drop out of the process as a whole. So everyone needs to understand why we need to make the transition to BIM tools and processes. We need to understand the gains and eventually want to make the transition ourselves. To that, obviously, the answer is the BIM adoption roadmap and the national BIM adoption strategy, which will guide everyone towards the direction that they need to take to implement BIM.
Application, submission, no? Governmental procedures?
What? Okay. There are certain areas that are more difficult to apply BIM, and obviously the submission process is one of them. Okay, it's traditionally the worst part or the most frustrating part of the construction process is getting the permits to build something, not building it. So imagine a rethinked line of permissions where you submit a BIM model and you automatically get the building permit through automatic checks, through you eliminate waiting times, you increase transparency, you restore the trust in the system, so everything is more democratic, if you want to say that. But again, it has a lot of requirements. We need to change our legislation, our building codes. We have to make them able to be understood from a machine code that is going to check them. So, and to do that, actually, we have to overcome the flaw in the system. I think it's us, the people. It's the resistance to change. A lot of things come from that. The technical issues can be resolved. The policy can be put together and try to enforce it. You can provide them with incentives. You can provide them with the processes. Eventually, if the people don't want to make the transition or resist to it, then it's going to fail. So,
thank you, Thrasivoulos. Marios, what do you think of that? What is your opinion on those issues?
Well, I mean, obviously, you have to look at the governmental infrastructure. But I'm going to start on the invert, and I'm going to look at how to solve it, right? So how to solve it is to start a dialogue, as EDEC has already did, and I will give a timeline. You cannot expect offices in Cyprus, and Cyprus in general, the government and everything, that they're going to do everything in 2 years. It's not going to happen. It's impossible. So I would look at a large amount of time. I would say 10 years. What can we do? Break it down and start the implementation to give the opportunity for everyone looking into implementing the policies, to education, to all the infrastructure to be built around this new era. And then, yes, the submissions would be automatic. There will be checks. We are living in an era of AI. We can implement that quite quickly. And we've seen countries in Europe where they submit that 3D BIM model, and it's enough to get the approval or not of the from the government to build it. And I believe with that, if we do that, we go beyond just building. We go into the world of a sustainable environment where Cyprus could really be a model for everyone in the area.
Thank you, Marios. And last but not least on that, Odysseas.
I feel that there's a much larger competency gap as regards to the contractors. So I feel that we need to reach out to them first. We need to educate them. We need to train them. We need to bring them to an international standard in order to be able to accept this new ecosystem. So it's not enough for practices to to adopt BIM, because for me, having the BIM experience in Cyprus, it is useless if you cannot take it to site. So you need to start, and obviously they need much more time and more training compared to us as consultants. So we need to start from now, and we need to provide the tools for them to be trained and educate. And in general, coming back to what you said about the culture, in general, the offices, practices lack time. So we don't do what international practices do, continuous training, CPDs, these kinds of things. We're always rushing to finish stuff, and there's no time left to educate ourselves, to improve ourselves. So somehow, maybe with improving the permit system, we gain much more time to start learning new stuff.
Thank you so much. I have to admit that all three of you have convinced me. I don't know for our audience. We'll see now on the voice of the applause, if they convince you or if there are any questions to take. No question. Thank you so much. I think we have concluded our session.